Hi, thank you for joining us. Such an action-packed primary day with competitive House, Senate, and governor's races in 5 states: Michigan, Kansas, Missouri, Virginia, and Washington state. The margins and turnout will offer new insight on Democratic and Republican enthusiasm, with the balance of power in Congress at stake in November. Tonight, the biggest race is playing out in the swing state of Michigan, which President Trump won in 2024. Progressive newcomer Abdul El-Sayed is squaring off against moderate Congresswoman Haley Stevens for the Democratic Senate nomination. Stevens spent the campaign talking about the cost of living and job creation issues El-Sayed discussed as well, along with his opposition to funding Israel and corporate influence.
The real disease is the system that allows big corporations, billionaires, special interests to buy and sell politicians in ways that leave them rigging the system against us. And I think right now that has only proven more true. So we're in a campaign to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all.
Sleeves are rolled up to hit the ground running for Michigan on day one as their next U.S. senator. And that is going to be to lower costs, to fight for our jobs, to push back on these tariffs, to do real industrial policy, to lessen our dependence on China, and to ban stock trading in the halls of Congress and for the president and vice president.
CBS News White House and politics reporter Aaron Navarro is in Detroit with more. What were the candidates' closing arguments to voters?
Lindsay, good to be with you. I'll start with Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who was leaning into her record as a outer Detroit Congresswoman since 2018, leaning into, yes, her relationships with local constituents, especially middle to older age black voters, but also her electoral success, winning in her district that has been competitive since 2018 through 2020 through 2024. You've seen Abdul El-Sayed focus on, yes, transforming in a way how the economy works for Michiganders, but also criticizing the outside spending from a pro-Israeli PAC, AIPAC, that has come in to help bolster the Stevens campaign. He has tied this to an argument against any foreign aid unconditionally to other countries. You're also seeing El-Sayed, perhaps in an acknowledgement that he believes he's the front runner at this moment, talk a little bit more about the general election. Yesterday and today to reporters, he talked about the Republican nominee, Mike Rogers, who is on the ballot unopposed tonight, and has said that he's a, quote, generationally bad candidate and that he will beat him by 7 points in November. Both candidates are also talking about and fielding questions about uniting the party after this pretty bruising primary, as both the progressive and establishment sides of the Democratic Party acknowledge they do need to beat Mike Rogers and hold this Senate seat if Democrats want any chance of keeping the Senate after the 2026 midterm elections.
What are voters telling you?
Voters have been a bit of a mixed bag. We met some Republicans who are supporting Mike Rogers, but haven't necessarily been that tuned in to the Democratic primary. We've met some El-Sayed supporters who credit outside spending as a main factor for why they've gotten involved and are voting in this primary. And we've heard from Stevens voters who cite knowledge, of familiarity with her, just given her record as a congresswoman, as well as some skepticism about El-Sayed beating Mike Rogers in November. I talked to one who was a Stevens supporter who cautioned about the topic of democratic socialism if it's tied to a candidate in November. Take a listen to what she told me. Generally, after 2024, how are you feeling about the brand of the Democratic Party right now?
Do we have a brand? I don't know anymore. I mean, I used to. I don't know anymore.
I think that's a sort of hard question to answer because I like some people, I dislike other people. I think that their brand is maybe a little like foggy nowadays. It mostly seems to be like we're not Republicans is what their brand is.
Now, given the internal debate over democratic socialism in the party right now, races like tonight's, as well as the governor's race in Wisconsin, the Democratic primary next Tuesday, will help give the Democratic Party signs on what exactly that brand is heading into November.
Wow, those interviews were very enlightening. Aaron Navarro, thank you. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, is here with more. I mean, those interviews with Democrats they're not a ringing endorsement come November. But let's go ahead and focus on tonight. Where do Stevens and El-Sayed have the most support?
Well, it relates to what you and Aaron were just talking about in this way. Michigan has, in recent history, been a place where Democrats have had those exact arguments between what some might call establishment candidates, between progressives. In fact, if I show you, rewind the clock here, in 2016, Michigan was a place where Bernie Sanders upset Hillary Clinton. She ultimately did get the nomination. But this was a place where Sanders did really well with young people. It was a signal to a lot of folks that there were a lot of, in fact, white working class voters who might be abandoning the party. Turns out they did. And then even in 2024, this number here, when Joe Biden ran 13% uncommitted, was a big focus at the time in Michigan, where people weren't necessarily thrilled with having him as the nominee. That's a little bit of the backstory, but let me move forward here to the present, because as y'all mentioned at the top, this is your map right now of Senate battlegrounds, and you see not too many of them are lit up here. Michigan is key because the Democrats otherwise need to go and win Republican-held seats. So this is a big reason that they need to hold on to Michigan. The argument here is, how do they do it? Is it progressives who have appealed to a lot of younger voters, or is it somebody considered more centrist, perhaps, where they need to persuade and get more moderate voters? That's the argument.
Do you have any polling right now that suggests which type of candidate could perform better in a general against a Republican?
Well, I'll show you this because it does speak a little bit to what I was just talking about. If I rewind to 2024, you see Kamala Harris in Michigan lost ground compared to 2020 among younger voters. I'm going to be watching those younger voters very intensely all through the fall. Now, Michigan is going to be important, but it's a larger dynamic in the story. The other part of this, though, is in 2024, the economy. I want to come back to this. Donald Trump won a lot of them, and he won the state. Democrats in this cycle need to persuade people that they're better on the economy, and it's been very mixed right now. So you mentioned the polling. This is the kind of argument that you're going to see laid out as you go towards the fall. These are the kind of voters, Democrats, if they have any chance, need to win back.
Okay, Anthony Salvanto, thank you as always.